I'm a trucker. Or, at least, I was. Some nights, I still wake up thinking I'm behind the wheel, heading down a long stretch of deserted highway, the kind that stretches endlessly across the dark, empty countryside. The kind of place where everything is quiet, too quiet. And when I say quiet, I mean it's like the world itself holds its breath. This was years ago, but I'll never forget that night. It started out like any other, just another long haul from Colorado to Tennessee. The sky was dark, and my headlights cut through the fog as I rumbled down the highway, trying to shake the weariness from my bones. I'd driven this route 100 times, so I didn't think much of it when the radio started acting up. Static crackled through the speakers, but nothing unusual. It was about 2 in the morning when I pulled off the highway to grab some coffee at a rest stop. The place was empty, except for one other truck parked at the far end of the lot. I didn't think much of it. There are always lonely drivers like me out there, pulling into rest stops for a quick break. The air was cold, and as I stepped out of my rig, I felt the chill of it on my skin. I pulled my jacket tighter around me, and that's when I saw him. A man. He was standing by the truck at the far end of the lot. Just standing there, staring. I could barely make out his features in the dim light. He didn't seem to be doing anything, just watching. I've seen a lot of odd things on the road, but this felt different. Something about him didn't sit right. I shrugged it off as my mind playing tricks on me, grabbed my coffee, and got back in the truck. As I pulled out, I glanced back at him. He was still standing there, his gaze locked on mine. I should have just driven off, but something pulled me back. I didn't know it then, but that was the first moment my life started to veer off course. The first moment that something wasn't quite right. I couldn't shake that feeling as I hit the road again. It was like a cold hand wrapped around my chest, squeezing just enough to keep me alert, but not quite enough to make me panic. I kept looking in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see the man still standing there, but the rest stop was empty. The headlights of my rig illuminated the stretch of road ahead, but the eerie silence around me was unsettling. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was just the late hour. But I couldn't get him out of my head. The fog rolled in thicker as I drove. The road was winding, cutting through dense forests and the occasional hill, just isolated enough to make you feel like you were the only one left in the world. It was the kind of place where you could disappear, and no one would notice. No one except for the other truckers, of course, who are always on the lookout for someone who might need help. I wasn't too far from the next town when I noticed something strange in my side mirror. A truck. I could barely make out the shape in the mist. At first, I didn't think anything of it. It was just another rig, right? But as I watched, it stayed right there behind me. The same distance, not gaining on me, not falling back. Just there. I thought maybe I was tired, maybe I was imagining things, but I decided to speed up a bit. My heart was starting to race now, for no reason I could understand. The truck behind me didn't change its pace. I could hear my own breath in my ears, the engine humming under me, but that other truck, it stayed perfectly synced with me. Then, it started. The light from the truck ahead blinked, once. Then twice. As if it was signaling me. My heart skipped. I tried to shake it off, telling myself it was just a coincidence, but deep down, I knew something wasn't right. I glanced at my dashboard. Everything looked normal, but when I looked back up, the truck had moved closer. I didn't hear it speeding up, it just appeared closer. I could barely make out the shape of the driver behind the wheel, but it wasn't the same truck I had seen earlier. The man at the rest stop. No. This guy was different. His truck was older, rusted at the edges, the lights flickering erratically. I tried to ignore it, kept my eyes on the road ahead, but when I glanced in the mirror again, it was right there. Too close. Something snapped inside me. I slammed my foot on the gas pedal, but no matter how fast I went, it stayed on my tail. That's when I heard it, static. The same static from the radio earlier. But this time, it wasn't just the radio. It was coming through the airwaves in my truck, filling the cab with a low, unnerving hum. The lights of the other truck flickered again, only this time, they were blinding. I couldn't see anything through the glare. And then the voice came through, a whisper barely audible over the hum. "You shouldn't be on this road." I froze. The hairs on my neck stood up, and for a second, I almost couldn't breathe. My foot was still on the gas pedal, but it felt like I wasn't even moving. The truck behind me, no, the thing behind me, was too close. So close, I could hear the roar of its engine as if it were inside my truck. And then, it was gone. I don't know how, but suddenly, the truck was gone from my mirrors. It was as if it had vanished into thin air. The fog, thick as ever, swallowed it whole. My hands were shaking, my mind racing. What the hell had just happened? I slammed on the brakes, pulling to the side of the road, my heart pounding in my chest. I didn't know what I was doing anymore. I felt like I had crossed some invisible line, and whatever was behind me wasn't something I could outrun. I sat there, listening to the wind, the sound of my own breathing, waiting. But nothing came. Not a sound, not a sign. Only the fog. Only silence. And yet, I knew, something was waiting for me to make the next move. I don't know how long I sat there on the side of the road, but the air was thick with something that made it hard to breathe. It wasn't just the fog or the cold, it was the weight of the moment. Every minute that passed felt like an hour. I thought about getting out of the truck, checking my surroundings, but the thought of stepping out into the blackness was too much to bear. I kept telling myself it was just my mind playing tricks, that I was exhausted, that I needed sleep. But deep down, I knew it wasn't exhaustion. Something had happened, something I couldn't explain. And it was as if the road itself was shifting beneath me, pulling me deeper into whatever this nightmare had become. Eventually, I forced myself to put the truck in gear and pull back onto the highway. The low rumble of the engine under me was the only sound as I picked up speed again, the road ahead a never-ending line of darkness. I kept checking my mirrors every few seconds, half expecting to see that other truck creeping up behind me. But nothing. Nothing except the stillness of the night. It wasn't until I reached a stretch of road I didn't recognize that I realized something was very, very wrong. The road signs were gone. There should have been a sign indicating how many miles until the next town, but it was just blank. The exit I normally took to get to the small town where I planned to stop for the night was no longer there. I tried to shake it off, thinking maybe I had just missed it. But the more I drove, the more I felt it, the weight of something moving just beyond my reach, just at the edge of my vision. Something watching. I started to accelerate, desperate to get somewhere, anywhere. The hum of the engine filled the cab, louder than usual, like it was feeding off my fear. That's when I noticed the lights. At first, they were just specks in the distance, maybe another truck or some headlights coming up on me. But the lights never seemed to get any closer. They just hovered in the distance, stationary, like they were waiting for me to get to them. And then, it hit me. I was going in circles. The thought made my stomach drop, and I immediately turned my wheel, trying to steer off the road, but the highway never changed. It just kept stretching on, the same stretch of blacktop beneath me, the same fog swirling through the air. No matter how far I drove, I couldn't seem to get anywhere. The static came back on the radio, louder this time, almost deafening. I slammed my hand on the dial, desperate to turn it off, but it wouldn't stop. Instead, I heard the whisper again, clear as day. "You've entered the road that doesn't end." I froze. My hands were slick with sweat as I gripped the steering wheel tighter. That voice. It wasn't the same man from earlier, but it felt like it was coming from the same place, the fog, the static. The road itself. I had to get off this highway. I had to find a way out. My mind was racing, but my body felt paralyzed, as if the road had some hold over me that I couldn't escape. Every exit I passed led to nothing. Just more of the same, more fog, more asphalt stretching endlessly ahead. It was like I was trapped in some kind of loop. And then, just as quickly as the fear had taken hold, the truck appeared again. Not behind me, but in front of me this time, its lights flickering in the distance like a warning. It was the same rusted rig I'd seen earlier, but now it was moving. It didn't drive like a normal truck. It swerved erratically, as if the driver had lost control, but somehow, the truck stayed straight on the road. It got closer, faster than it should have, until the front end of my truck was almost nose to nose with it. I couldn't move. I couldn't react. The truck was too close, and I was paralyzed with fear. The lights blinded me, but I couldn't look away. And then, just when I thought the collision was inevitable, it happened. The truck disappeared. 1 second, it was there, and the next. Gone. Just like that. I slammed on the brakes, but my tires screeched on the asphalt as I struggled to stop the truck. I could feel my heart in my throat, my mind reeling. I was no longer on the highway I had known. I had driven into something I couldn't explain, something that didn't obey the rules of the road, or of reality itself. The static finally stopped, and all that was left was the sound of my own breath and the low hum of the engine. I looked around, and for the first time in what felt like hours, I noticed something. The sky. It wasn't the same sky I had seen earlier. It wasn't even dark anymore. The stars, they were gone. And the road? It didn't lead anywhere. I was stuck. The road wasn't a road anymore. It was something else, something that didn't make sense. And I was never going to leave. I don't know how long I was out there, days, maybe. Hours. Time had stopped making sense after a while. The truck's engine hummed beneath me, a steady, mechanical reminder that I was still alive, but everything else was slipping away. The fog never lifted. The road never changed. It was like I was driving through a never-ending loop of nothingness, the world beyond the windshield a blur of indistinct gray. The radio was dead now, no static, no whispers. Just silence. I don't know why I kept driving. Maybe it was because I had to. Maybe it was because I didn't know what else to do. Maybe I thought if I just kept going, eventually, I'd find a way out. But there was no out. Not here. Not anymore. At some point, I pulled off to the side again, thinking I could just rest for a while. But when I opened the door to step out of the truck, the air hit me with a coldness that felt wrong. It wasn't the kind of chill that comes from a winter's night. It was unnatural. I looked around, expecting to see the distant glow of a town, a sign, anything. But there was nothing. Only the same stretch of empty highway, disappearing into the mist. The ground under my feet was soft, almost like it was sinking, shifting beneath me. I took a few steps away from the truck, but as I moved, the road seemed to move with me, stretching farther ahead and behind me as though I were walking in place. And then, it came again. The voice. You should have stayed on the road. I whirled around, heart pounding, but I saw nothing. No one. Just the empty, fog-choked highway. My pulse raced, my breath shallow, and I couldn't help but feel like something was waiting for me, something that had always been there, lurking just out of sight. I jumped back into the truck, locking the door behind me. The cold had seeped into my bones, and I couldn't shake the feeling that the road was alive, that it was pulling me deeper into whatever dark reality I had stumbled into. I pushed the gas pedal to the floor, the truck roaring to life, its tires screeching as they spun against the road. I needed to get away, to outrun whatever was hunting me. But no matter how fast I drove, the fog closed in around me, thickening, choking the air until I couldn't see beyond the edge of the headlights. That's when I saw them. Figures. Shapes in the mist. I didn't know if they were real or just another trick of my tired mind, but I saw them, standing at the edge of the road. They were tall, Too tall, and their features were blurred, like they were made of smoke. I could see their eyes, though, shining, glowing with an unnatural light. I slammed on the brakes, barely able to stop in time, and the figures moved toward me. Slowly. Stepping into the beams of the headlights. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. The way they moved told me everything I needed to know. They were waiting for me. I tried to reverse the truck, but the gears wouldn't shift. The engine sputtered, and the lights flickered, casting the road in an eerie glow. The figures kept coming closer. They moved as one, like a collective, a swarm that knew no boundaries. I was paralyzed with fear. My mind screamed at me to do something, anything, but my body refused to obey. The figures were almost at the truck now. I could hear their steps, slow, deliberate, echoing in the stillness of the fog. And then, just as they reached the truck, everything stopped. The fog parted, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I saw something else. A sign. A road sign. It read, "You are here. There is no way out." I stared at it for what felt like an eternity. And that's when I understood. There was no escape. No way back. The road wasn't just some stretch of highway, it was a trap. A place where lost souls came to wander forever, caught in a never-ending loop. The figures in the mist were part of it. They were the ones who had been waiting. Waiting for me. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. The figures reached the truck, and as they surrounded me, I felt my vision fade to black. When I woke up, I was back in the driver's seat. The truck was moving again, and the road stretched ahead of me, the fog as thick as ever. I rubbed my eyes, trying to shake off the disorientation. But then, I glanced in the rearview mirror. The other truck was there again, right behind me, its lights flickering like some twisted warning. I didn't dare look away, but I couldn't stop myself from looking. And there, in the reflection, I saw something I wish I hadn't. The man from the rest stop. He was standing in the bed of the truck, staring at me with those empty, hollow eyes. He was grinning. And I knew then that I was never going to leave this road. Not ever. The last thing I heard before everything went dark again was that same whisper, the voice I had heard all along, "You shouldn't have kept driving." I wish I could say that after everything I've been through, I finally woke up, or that it was just a bad dream. But there's no waking up from this. No escaping it. This road, it doesn't let you go. It doesn't care if you're a trucker, a traveler, or someone just passing through, it claims everyone who steps foot on it, even for a moment. I've lost count of how many miles I've driven now. The days blur together, and I don't even know what day it is anymore, if time even exists on this stretch of highway. It all feels like one endless night. I've seen things. Things that can't be explained by anything logical. Faces that appear in the mist, strangers, lost souls, who walk by my truck without a word, their eyes hollow, staring as though they're trying to pull me into the fog with them. Sometimes, I see their hands pressed against the windows, leaving fingerprints that don't fade. But it's not just the faces. It's the whispers. The voices that come from everywhere and nowhere, filling the cab, filling my head. They say things like, "You'll never escape," or "You belong here now." I don't know how long I've been hearing them. A week? A month? I've lost track. I've tried everything. I've tried stopping the truck, getting out, screaming for help, but the road never changes. The horizon doesn't shift. I'm still on the same stretch of highway, locked in this endless loop. The truck just keeps moving, and no matter how hard I fight, I can't stop it. I've even tried to sleep. But sleep doesn't come. Instead, I close my eyes for a moment, and I hear the voices growing louder. They tell me stories, things that aren't real but feel so damn true. They tell me about other truckers who came before me, trapped in the same cycle. They whisper about the man from the rest stop, the one who watches from behind the wheel of that rusted rig. They tell me he's not just a man, he's the keeper of this place, the one who makes sure no one leaves. And I swear, I've seen him. I've seen him, standing at the side of the road, waiting for me. Every time I pass, his eyes meet mine through the fog, and I can feel his gaze burn into my soul. I know he's waiting for something, waiting for me to make the final choice. The last choice. I finally understand now. The truck, the fog, the endless highway, it's all a test. A trap. The road doesn't just keep you here because you're lost. It keeps you here because you're meant to be here. All those people who come and go, the faces in the mist. They're not trying to escape. They're here because they failed the test, like I did. The road isn't just a place, it's a judgment. And the only way out is surrender. I've fought it for so long. I've tried to outrun it, tried to fight it, but the harder I struggle, the harder it pulls me in. Every time I think I see a way out, an exit, a sign, a town, it's just more road. More fog. More of the same. And now, as I drive, I can feel it. I can feel the road pulling me in deeper, telling me that it's time to make my final choice. Do I fight, or do I finally let go? I know what will happen if I choose to keep fighting. The truck will keep going, the fog will keep closing in, and I'll lose myself completely. I'll become another lost soul, wandering these endless miles, my name forgotten. But if I give in, maybe that's when the road will finally let me go. Maybe I'll be free of this nightmare. But then again, there's that voice, the one that's always there, whispering in the back of my mind. You can never leave. Not really. Not until you've learned the lesson. I don't know what the lesson is. But I'm afraid that the only thing I'll learn is that there is no end to this road. No end to this nightmare. Because once you're here, you're part of it. Forever. As I keep driving, I can see the fog thickening again, the figures in the distance moving closer, closer. The same figures. The same faces. They reach out toward me with cold, dead hands. And I know. I know now that I'll never leave. So, here I am. Still driving. Still waiting. For the inevitable. For the road to claim me completely. And for the moment when the fog swallows me whole. I had thought I understood it all. I had believed I was at the end, that there was no escaping this nightmare of endless asphalt, fog, and lost souls. But now I know something even worse. There's more to this road. There's more to what happens after you think you've given up. You see, the thing that I didn't understand before, what the voices didn't warn me about, is that the road doesn't just claim you. It changes you. Slowly. Little by little. Every time you drive it, every time you're caught in its grasp, you begin to forget. You forget what it felt like to be human, to be alive. The road doesn't just steal your soul. It turns you into something else. I'm not the same man who started this journey. I feel it. I see it every time I look in the rearview mirror. My face is different now. I don't know when it started changing, but it's like the fog has seeped into my very skin, into my bones. My eyes are darker. My hands are colder. And when I look at myself, I don't recognize the person staring back. And that's when I saw it. The final part of the road. The thing that truly seals your fate. It started with a single, subtle change. I had been driving through the thick mist when I heard a faint noise from the passenger side. At first, I thought it was the wind, the road itself whispering more nonsense. But then, it came again, a soft shuffle of movement, the sound of something, breathing. I froze, my hands tight on the wheel, my heart hammering in my chest. I hadn't seen anyone get in. I hadn't pulled over. But there it was again, a soft, labored breath, just behind me, as if someone had slipped into the passenger seat without me noticing. Slowly, I turned my head, and I saw them. It was a woman. She was sitting there, in the passenger seat, staring straight ahead with those vacant, hollow eyes. Her skin was pale, her lips slightly parted in a way that made it look like she was trying to speak but couldn't. Her clothes were tattered, torn, like she'd been traveling on this road for far longer than I had. But the worst part, the thing that made my blood run cold, was the smell. It wasn't just the dampness of the fog. It was the stench of death. I didn't know who she was, but I knew exactly what she was. Another lost soul. Another victim of the road, just like me. I didn't speak. I couldn't speak. I was too terrified. The truck kept moving, the hum of the engine too loud in the oppressive silence. But the woman, she didn't move. Didn't say anything. She just kept staring, unblinking, her eyes locked on some distant point ahead. I couldn't take it anymore. I had to ask. "Who are you?" My voice came out hoarse, barely a whisper. Her head tilted slowly to the side, and for the first time, she moved. But not in a way that felt human. It was like her neck snapped, a jarring, unnatural motion, and she turned her gaze toward me. Her lips parted again, and I thought for a moment she might speak. But she didn't. Instead, she reached out. Her hand was cold, so cold that it burned as it touched my arm. I flinched, but I couldn't pull away. I couldn't even breathe. "You're not alone here anymore," she whispered. Her voice was like the wind itself, hollow, empty. It was as though the road itself was speaking through her. And then, she did something I didn't expect. She leaned closer. Her breath was icy against my skin as she whispered again, her lips brushing my ear. "You will never leave this road. We all keep driving, forever." Suddenly, I understood. The truth I had been running from this whole time. It wasn't just about being lost. It wasn't just about being trapped. It was about becoming one of them. Becoming a part of the road. I wanted to scream, to push her away, but my body wouldn't respond. My hands were frozen, my legs stiff, and all I could do was watch as she slowly faded from view, like smoke drifting away in the fog. The truck kept moving. The road kept stretching ahead, endless as before. But now, something was different. I could feel them. More souls. More lost travelers, riding alongside me, all around me. I could hear their voices, soft murmurs, their presence thick in the air. The truck was no longer mine. I wasn't in control. I was just another passenger now, another ghost, bound to the road, bound to this never-ending cycle. The fog thickened, and for the first time, I realized that the highway wasn't just a place. It was a living thing, and now, I was part of it. It knew me. It had always known me. I looked at the rearview mirror one last time. The figure from the rest stop was there. Not in the distance, not just a shadow, he was right behind me, his grin wide and full of darkness. And I knew then. There's no way out. Not for me. Not for anyone. Because the road claims everyone. And now, I am part of it. Forever. It's been a long time since I wrote the last part of this. Days? Weeks? Time has long since stopped making sense. I don't know how much longer I can keep going, or how much longer I even want to keep going. The truck never stops. The road never ends. I've learned that now, the hard way. I thought I understood what was happening, what they wanted, what the road demanded of me. But I didn't. I was wrong. It's not just about becoming a part of it. That's what I thought. That's what I thought I was. Another lost soul, another lost trucker wandering the fog, doomed to drive forever. But it's worse. Much worse. I've started to forget everything. Not just who I was, but what I am. The names, the faces, even the sound of my own voice are slipping through my fingers like sand. All that's left now is the truck, the road, and the endless cycle. I don't know who I was before this. Maybe I was someone else. Maybe I wasn't even a trucker. But that's the thing about the road, it erases you. It consumes you until you don't exist anymore. Not as a person. Just as a part of the road. A passenger, just like the others. I see them now, more faces, more figures standing on the edge of the highway, more souls trapped in the fog, staring at me with hollow eyes, waiting for me to pass by. They never speak. They don't need to. Their presence alone is enough. And then, something happened. Something that I didn't see coming. The other night, I saw a sign. It wasn't like the others, blank, unmarked, and fading into the fog. This one was different. This one was clear. It said, "The end." It was like a warning. Or maybe it was a promise. The end. I should have stopped. I should have turned around. I should have done anything to avoid it. But I didn't. Something in me, the part that's still me, buried deep down, wanted to know what would happen. So I kept driving. Faster and faster, ignoring the warning signs that were right in front of me, begging me to stop. And then I saw it. A figure in the road. A person. Standing still, blocking my path. I slammed on the brakes, but the truck didn't stop. The road pulled me forward, no matter how hard I tried to slow down. The figure didn't move. It was a man, but his face was shadowed, his body cloaked in the same fog that surrounded everything else. I should have swerved. I should have avoided him. But I couldn't. I couldn't stop. The truck, the road, they were in control now. Not me. The man raised his hand, as if to tell me to stop. But I couldn't stop. I was speeding toward him, helpless to do anything. And then, when I was mere inches away from hitting him, he spoke. "Welcome to the final rest stop." And everything went dark. I don't know what happened after that. I don't know how much time passed. But when I opened my eyes again, I wasn't in the truck anymore. I was standing on the side of the road. The same road. But this time, the fog was thinner, and I could see something in the distance. It was a figure, a shadow, a person, but they were too far away for me to make out clearly. And then I felt it. The pull. The road was calling me. The truck was calling me. Everything was pulling me back, telling me to keep going, to never stop, to drive forever. But I couldn't. Not anymore. Not after everything I've seen, everything I've become. I turned away from the road. And I started walking. I don't know if I'm free now. I don't know if I ever will be. But for the first time, I felt like I had a choice. I could walk away. And that's when I realized the truth, the final truth. The road doesn't just claim you because you're lost. It claims you because it wants you to choose. It wants to see if you'll keep driving, if you'll accept your fate, or if you'll fight to leave. But the choice, it's never easy. Because once you leave, you can never come back. So, I'm walking. I'm walking away from the road. I don't know where it will lead, but I know one thing, I'm not going back. Not now. Not ever. But if you're reading this, if you find yourself on that road, be careful. The fog, the figures, the road, they're always waiting. And when you make your choice, be sure it's the one you want. Because once you're on it, there's no turning back.